Hello and welcome to the fifth tutorial in this Photoshop series. I've picked an image tonight which I took on the most recent workshop that I did up in Assynt in the Northwest Highlands of Scotland. It's a great place, I love it. And one of the chaps there, a friend of mine called Kwame, was interested in capturing movement in waves using intentional camera movement. And while I was showing him the techniques and trying to sort of dial in the aperture and the shutter speed, I shot several frames off myself, and this was one of them. So I thought I'd show you how I go about editing it. Open it in Photoshop, and with this kind of image, I'll just do my basic lens corrections on it. I see it as it's quite an arty kind of picture, and so I'm quite comfortable going heavy on things like vibrance and contrast because the image is otherworldly anyway. It's kind of surreal and it doesn't need to be based in reality, so I'll just go in whatever direction I want with it. What I'm interested in is these greens. I love these greens here, and as the waves were breaking, you were really seeing these turquoisey colours. There's some brown here from the rocks on the other side of the beach, and I like this kind of foam that was moving in the foreground. So my first protocol would be vibrance, and really to see, just look at that straight away, all that colour coming out, love it. Obviously a curves adjustment, which I think works nicely. Bit of contrast in that curve. And then dehaze. Often I don't like too much dehaze, but on this kind of image, dehaze and clarity can really add some nice pop. The only downside is I'm getting a bit of a kind of magenta-y, purpley cast here, which is a bit strong. So even before I go into Photoshop, I'm going to look at these colours, and I'm going to take the hue of the purples over to blue. The saturation of the magenta, take that away. And that's good. That's kind of got rid of that. It's kind of got rid of that purpliness, but it's left the green. Only thing is it's taken that orange away up there, which I do quite like, that warmth of the orange. So I'm going to leave that. There we go. In terms of the colour, the auto white balance that I've used has done a pretty good job with that, I would say, but I would tend to push it towards the green because I want to enhance those green colours. And then, yeah, I'll definitely go a touch towards the blue just to cool it all down, which I think works well. I just want to brighten it a bit more like that. And there we go, I quite like that. Open image. So I've done everything almost there that I need to do on this image, really. In Camera Raw straight away. I'll duplicate the image as I always do, a couple of times. And for me now it's about the crop. I quite like this little passage in the middle here, but this is really what interests me. So I'm beginning to think maybe a 5x4. So I go to into crop, I go to the aspect ratio, I select 5x4, and then I'm kind of liking the bands, the dark, the light, the green, the grey, and the white. But is it a bit more simple over there without the crash? Does it need those waves at the top? And in fact, would it be better as a square? And this all comes down to personal taste, this kind of thing. And even lifting that just a touch there. No. I like the square, but I didn't like losing that bottom section. there. I think that's quite good. If anything though, I do find this bottom bit is a bit lost, and perhaps I could add some nice colour to that. And so what I would tend to do here is use this tool, which is the eyedropper tool. If I left click on the eyedropper tool, it then gives me a sort of an eyedropper, like a pipette type of thing. And I can select a colour, and I'm going to go for one of these mid greens here, and I left click. And if you look at the colours down here, black and white, when I click here, it now turns it to this green colour. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to add a blank layer. So it's not a mask, it's kind of equivalent to, I think of it as a piece of cling film over this layer. And you do it by this plus that I normally use to duplicate a layer. If I click it on its own, I just get this blank layer. So as I said, there's nothing on it, and anything I draw on there I'm going to put it at 48%. I'm just going to paint over there, and that's just put a bit of green into that bottom. It's a bit too strong for me personally, so that's fine. And I can now adjust the blend layer, the blend mode of this whole layer. So I think I showed it in one of the earlier videos. If I click the little drop down, each of these blend modes does a slightly different thing. That dissolve, I'm not sure why anyone would use that dissolve, but it must be there for a reason. Darken, multiply, colour burn. You see, I kind of like that colour burn effect there, because it's keeping those. I quite like that as well, overlay. So what I will do is I'll do it as overlay. I'll duplicate the layer, turn it off, and although it's in overlay, I'm going to look at the opacity. And I kind of like it at 100%. So I'll just merge that down. And then this one I duplicated, I'm going to select that layer, and instead of overlay, I'm going to put it onto the one that I liked, which I think was colour burn. It's way too strong. So now I'll reduce the opacity to 0 and just bring it up a bit like that. But I don't like the dark line that it's done to the top. Sort of, I'll just make a smaller brush. This dark line across here, I'm not keen on that. So I'm going to add a mask. If you watch my previous video on layers and masks, you'll know that we just put a white mask on so that everything's visible. And then by using a black brush, I can erase this colour burn from this top section. There. That's quite nice. So if I merge that down, I can now see what those last two processes using the two blend modes have done. They've just added that nice bit of colour there, which I like. I think it's good. It just brings the whole image together. And this is part of using Photoshop. You've got to start having a bit of vision and thinking, well, what is it I want to create? And then you can then use the tools to create that vision. So I think that works quite well. The only slightly distracting thing for me is this dark line here. I find this dark area a bit distracting. So this is where I would use the clone stamp. It's already set to lighten, which is handy. I'll select this area here, and I'll just lighten it. 15% is a bit low, so I'll go to 33%. I'll select a new point down here, which is quite a bit lighter. And just lighten that like that. And I prefer that knocked back a bit rather than being so intense. So that works. I'm just wondering if these whites down here, they are quite bright, those. I'll duplicate the layer. I'll go back into camera raw. I'll just look down there at this brighter area, and I wonder if we can get a bit of detail out of that. So by pulling the highlights back, maybe bring the whites back even a bit, or even reducing the exposure just a touch. Okay, what was that done? Yeah, you see, I like the effect that that's had in the majority, not to all of the image. So I'll add a black mask, so it's Alt and mask, so I can't see any of that layer that I've just created. With a white brush, I go over the top at 48%. I'm painting it in there. I like that. So it's mainly at the bottom, and then with a slightly smaller brush, I'm just gonna paint a bit of that in as well. No, I didn't like that last stroke. That didn't work. There. And let's see what effect that's had there. Now I don't like it how it's taken some of that brightness away from the middle of this wave, so I'm gonna remove it from there, because I like that effect in the middle. It describes the shape of the wave, these little highlights in the middle. And then I'll look at the overall opacity of what I've just done. I'm just going to add it in at 40% and merge that down. So that's sort of getting there really for me. I'm trying to think of what else I could do with that image. These oranges that I initially liked at the top, I'm not sure they're really bringing anything to it. So I'll duplicate the layer. I'll go into camera raw. And I think I'll just take the saturation of the oranges down slightly, cool it just a touch. Okay, and then by adding a black mask, I can then use a white brush and just paint that in without any of that warmth, because I just don't think that warmth was really adding anything. There, merge that down. And I think that's almost my finished edit. The only thing that I will do now on top is, you'll have noticed that there is some noise. I did have to shoot this at quite a high ISO because I was shooting it using a long focal length, and I needed to use an aperture of something like f14 to get enough depth of field through the scene. So again, I go back into camera raw and look at the noise reduction. So if I zoom in here to 100%, this third icon along detail allows noise reduction. Now I'll put a bit of color noise reduction in, but the luminance is the one that does the main job. But you pay a price for noise reduction, and the price you pay is in detail. So that's almost all, you know, the noise pretty much gone out of that now. There's a tiny bit. I'll just add a little bit more, and that's, the noise is well gone there. But what I then do is I have a look and see, has that noise reduction cost me the feel of the image? And it's not really for me. It's still got all the drama, and there's a bit of detail lost, but it's worth it to have a nice smooth creamy surface to the image. So that's my finished shot. Hope you enjoyed sort of following along. Just that white streak that was orange, is that needed? I'm not convinced. So here I will use my clone stamp. I'll set it to darken. It's at 33%. I'm just gonna darken those lighter bits. I'm still leaving plenty of texture because I don't want that to be complete black. I want that texture to be there, but I didn't want it to be grabbing my eye and sort of holding my attention, which it doesn't do now. There. So when I click that on and off, there we go. It's definitely better reduced. And if I go back to my original image, which is not the original raw, this is just the initial image that I brought out of Photoshop with my basic manipulation, was that, and I've turned it to that. So not a huge amount of work, but just little edits here and there to get the final shot. So that's me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Again, a lot of it has been about really just looking at the photograph and deciding what I want to do, how I want to manipulate the colour and the tones, and to get an image that I'm quite happy with. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.